In 1926, the United States government was poisoning the alcohol supply, not by accident, not as an unintended side effect, deliberately, systematically, with a formula developed by federal chemists specifically designed to make drinking alcohol deadly. And when people started dying, the official response from the man who designed the policy was this: the person who drinks this industrial alcohol is a deliberate suicide. That quote is real. The man who said it held more power over American law than most members of Congress. His name was Wayne Wheeler, and what he built killed at least 10,000 Americans. To understand what happened, you need to understand what Prohibition actually was. The 18th Amendment banned the manufacture, sale, and transportation of intoxicating liquors. It did not ban industrial alcohol. Industrial alcohol was used in paint, fuel, cleaning products, perfume. Factories needed it. Industries depended on it. So the government created two categories of alcohol. Drinking alcohol, banned. Industrial alcohol, legal. The problem was obvious almost immediately. Bootleggers figured out that industrial alcohol could be turned back into something drinkable. By the mid-1920s, an estimated 60 million gallons of industrial alcohol were being diverted every year. The government noticed, and it had a choice. It could accept that prohibition wasn't working and people were going to drink regardless, or it could make the industrial alcohol so toxic that redistillation couldn't make it safe. It chose the poison. Denaturing was the official term, the process of adding toxic substances to industrial alcohol to make it undrinkable, had existed since before Prohibition. A small amount of methanol, the dangerous cousin of drinking alcohol, was standard. You couldn't taste it, you couldn't see it, but even a small amount caused damage. As bootleggers got better at removing the original denaturants, the government escalated. By 1926, the federal formula had been redesigned to include methanol, benzene, kerosene, and pyridine. The idea was to make the mixture impossible to clean up for human consumption. Here is what they knew when they made that decision. They knew the alcohol was being diverted. They knew people were drinking it. They knew methanol made you blind before it killed you. And they had the death statistics from previous years to confirm the policy was already causing fatalities. They escalated anyway. Wayne Wheeler publicly defended the formula. In a statement that should have ended his career, he said the government had no obligation to provide drinkable alcohol, and that anyone who consumed industrial alcohol was committing suicide. The Assistant Secretary of the Treasury went further. He suggested the deaths were self-inflicted justice. You knew the law, you chose to break it. If it kills you, that is the natural consequence of your choice. That was the official position of the United States government. What happened on the ground was a chemical arms race that historians call the chemists' war of prohibition. On one side, federal chemists designing increasingly lethal denaturing formulas, testing each formula to make sure it couldn't be removed through redistillation. On the other side, bootlegger chemists, some trained professionals, many improvising, trying to strip out the toxins well enough that the result wouldn't kill the people who paid for it. The government kept winning. The people caught between were the drinkers. They had no way of knowing which bottles were safe. The poison didn't change the color. It didn't change the smell most of the time. You couldn't tell by looking. You bought a bottle, you drank it, and then, sometimes hours later, sometimes a day later, the methanol began its work. Methanol is not like regular alcohol. It metabolizes differently in the human body. Your liver converts it into formaldehyde and formic acid. The formic acid attacks the optic nerve first. You might wake up the next morning and find your vision blurring, then dimming, then gone. Some people went blind before they understood they were in danger. Others made it to a hospital. Many didn't. Let me be specific about what methanol poisoning does, because the medical record of this period deserves to be read clearly. The first symptoms appear hours after drinking: headache, nausea, abdominal pain that feels like something tearing loose inside. Then the vision problems begin. A strange shimmering, a narrowing of peripheral sight, what some survivors described as looking at the world through a snowstorm. If the dose is large enough, the acidosis sets in. The blood becomes fatally acidic. Breathing becomes difficult, convulsions, then coma, then death. If the dose is survivable, the aftermath is often permanent blindness, partial paralysis, neurological damage that does not heal. Alexander Gettler was the chief toxicologist under Charles Norris at the New York City Medical Examiners. He developed the first systematic methods for detecting methanol in human tissue, testing brain matter, liver samples, blood, to establish definitively that these people had been poisoned. He documented hundreds of cases in New York City alone in 1926. He could prove with physical evidence what was killing them, and what was killing them was in the bottle the government told the bootleggers to make. The crisis peaked during the Christmas holidays of 1926. On Christmas Eve, people all across New York City bought bootleg liquor to celebrate. By morning, Bellevue Hospital was overwhelmed. Patients arrived in waves, some blind, some paralyzed, some already unconscious. Nurses moved from bed to bed. Doctors administered what antidotes they had, which were limited and often insufficient. By the end of Christmas Day, at least 8 people had died at Bellevue alone. By December 27th, the city morgue had received 23 more bodies. The new year brought more. By the time January 1927 ended, Gettler's office had documented hundreds of poisoning deaths. Across the country, the pattern was the same. Cities reported surges in hospital admissions after holiday weekends. The deaths were quieter in rural areas, no major medical examiner documenting them systematically, but they were happening everywhere the bootleg supply reached. The government did not change the formula. It did not issue a warning. It did not convene an inquiry. The policy held. Dr. Charles Norris was not a quiet man. He had spent his career rebuilding the medical examiner's office into the most rigorous forensic institution in the country, replacing the old corrupt coroner system with science-based investigation. He had seen what the denaturing program was doing. He had the bodies. He had Gettler's chemical analysis. He had the numbers. And in late 1926, he went public. The government knows it is not stopping drinking by putting poison in alcohol. Yet it continues its poisoning processes, heedless of the fact that people determined to drink are daily absorbing that poison. Knowing this to be true, the United States government must be charged with the moral responsibility for the deaths that poisoned liquor causes. It was printed in newspapers across the country. It was cited in congressional debate. Senator Edward Edwards of New Jersey stood on the Senate floor and called the policy legalized murder, and still the policy held. I want to be fair here, because this argument deserves a fair hearing. Wayne Wheeler and those who agreed with him were not monsters by their own reasoning. They were moral crusaders who believed alcohol was destroying American families, and by most evidence of the era, it was causing enormous harm. Their position was essentially, the law is the law. If you break it, the consequences belong to you. The government is under no obligation to make law-breaking safe. You can hold that position and be internally consistent. But here's what I cannot get past. The government knew the denaturing wasn't stopping consumption. It knew people were dying in large numbers. It had that information from the medical examiner's office, and it escalated the formula anyway in 1927 after the Christmas deaths. At that point, you are no longer setting a deterrent. You are choosing, with full knowledge, to continue killing. No one was ever charged. Not Wayne Wheeler, not the Treasury officials who signed off on the formula upgrades, not the chemists who designed the specific compounds. No hearing was ever held. No compensation was ever offered to the families of the 10,000 Americans who died. The deaths were classified, administratively, as the result of voluntary consumption of illegal substances, self-inflicted. The government could not be held legally responsible. And then something quieter happened. The story faded. When Prohibition ended in 1933, the denaturing program ended with it. There was no reckoning, no truth commission, no official acknowledgement. The historians who wrote the first Prohibition accounts focused on the gangsters, the speakeasies, the jazz. The poison program was a footnote, if it appeared at all. For decades, the standard American education about prohibition was a failed experiment. It created organized crime and it ended. The 10,000 people who died in the government's chemical war on its own citizens did not make the chapter. If you've been following this channel, you recognize the shape of this story. A government policy causes widespread civilian death. Officials with documented knowledge of the harm defend it publicly. One or two voices and positions of authority try to make the record clear. The record is heard, printed in newspapers, cited in the Senate, and ignored. And then, when it's over, the institutional history moves on without the bodies. This pattern does not live only in the past. Lead in the water supply of Flint, Michigan was documented and knowingly tolerated for over a year. PFAS chemicals in drinking water were detected at federal facilities and suppressed. The formula for what you are allowed to put in something before it kills you is still a negotiated number. The chemists' war of prohibition never completely ended. It just moved into different laboratories. In 1933,